Righto, hope you enjoyed that one. That was hiking the Piccaninny Gorge / Creek Walk here in Western Australia, Purnululu National Park, or better known as the Bungle Bungles. This is a super iconic place in Australia, and this hike had been on my to-do list for a pretty long time now, and I was super rapt to get this one underway and under my belt. So to actually get to the trailhead itself, I flew into Kununurra about midday and jumped in a 4-wheel drive, booked it to Purnululu National Park, and it took me just shy of 5 hours, probably about 4 hours 45 to get to the campsite. So it's not a small drive, and once you get off the main highway there, the road is absolutely rough as guts. The corrugations, if you don't have a 4-wheel drive, will absolutely tear your car apart. There's also a couple of creek crossings as well. Some are smaller than others. There is one sort of largish one which does go a little bit deep, and I don't think a normal car would be able to get through there. So just keep that in mind. You do have to register to do this hike. As you're going into the national park, you'll see a little tourist centre and you physically have to sign in and sign out of the book. They also make you carry a PLB. If you don't have one, they do have hire options. I didn't need one, so I didn't know what the hire options costed, but yeah, it was $8 per night to actually camp in the gorge itself. So ridiculously cheap to do that. And you will also have to have a national parks pass for the amount of time that you're there. Unfortunately, by the time I got there in the afternoon, the tourist centre was closed. So I had to return in the morning to register myself. By the time I got to the trailhead, it would have been about 9 o'clock. So much later than I normally prefer to start hiking. But nevertheless, I was pretty fortunate by the time I got into Cathedral Gorge. I timed it to perfection, unbeknownst to me, because I had about 5 minutes completely to myself. I did think that was super unusual given the amount of traffic that I had seen at the Bungle Bungles. I was really counting my lucky stars to have the whole place to myself for that little time period. After Cathedral Gorge, that's pretty much when the creek walk started. And I got to say, I was not mentally prepared for how much soft sand and rubble there was to come. It gave me major flashbacks to when I did the Cape to Cape. There was about a 5K section just walking on the softest sand. And yeah, it was actually quite weary. And I was pretty buggered by the end of the day. I ended up making it to a Black Rock pool around mid-arvo. And I got to say, I was pretty bloody impressed with this place. It was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. I sat there for about half hour, 45 minutes, just soaking it all up. And swimming is not permitted here. It's the most reliable water source in the whole gorge system. So yeah, no go for swimming there. After that, I hiked maybe another 2 or 3 kilometers before deciding to set up camp. You can set up anywhere along the gorge system, and to be honest, anywhere you camp will be a good location. There's a plethora of locations that you can stop and set up in, and yeah, you will be absolutely spoiled for choice if you do this hike. The next morning, I was up bright and early. I knew I had a pretty long day ahead of me. The goal was to explore the 5 fingers. I started off with finger 1 and was pretty impressed with it. There's a reasonably nice view atop of a little hill. It goes a little bit further, and then just goes to a sudden dead end. But yeah, it was pretty cool exploring that first little finger. Next up was finger number 2. I had no idea what was to come, and this absolutely blew my mind. Pretty much off the bat, you will go straight into a cave, and it's probably about 100 meters long, pitch black in the guts of it. And yeah, this was a massive, massive highlight for me. It goes all the way through, and then once you finish the cave, it probably goes for another 200-300 meters after that. There's like a massive boulder that is fallen down and wedged in between the actual gorge itself, and you kind of clamber underneath it. So it's pretty bloody cool, and I was really, really impressed with finger number 2. Fingers 3 and 4 were a bit of a different story. I couldn't really quite work out where to go with number 3. Did a bit of rock scrambling, and it just looked like a whole heap more of rock scrambling up further. So I decided to call it quits pretty early on that one. Similar story with finger number 4. I reckon I did maybe 100 meters up the finger, and it just looked like it was going up in elevation with a whole lot more rock scrambling. There might have been a decent view at the top of it, but I was not going to exhaust that much energy and time just to potentially get a half decent view with, yeah, not too much reward at the end of it. So I decided to call it quits reasonably early on those 2 fingers and headed back towards camp. Finger 5 was the last one that I did. That was pretty cool, probably on par with finger number 1, maybe goes for 200 or 300 meters up and then just comes to a complete stop. There is a little bit of scrambling that you can kind of go through, a little tunnel or cave, but nothing like finger number 2. With all the fingers wrapped up, it was about an hour or 2 hike back to my tent. I did decide to leave a bulk portion of my gear just sitting in my tent. No real point carrying it with me. It would have been another 5, 6, 7 kilos of weight added to my backpack that I didn't need because I'd be returning back there later on in the afternoon. So yeah, it was really nice to have a bit of a lighter pack for that day. The next morning I was up bright and early again. Fairly ended up hooking it back to the car park, got back there in about 3 hours time. Did minimal filming, only set the tripod up about 3 times, and did do a little detour up into the lookout area, which was pretty damn cool because you did get a higher vantage point overlooking the Bungle Bungles. Overall though, I was pretty bloody impressed with this hike and I thought it was hard to fault. There was one minor thing though which kind of ruined the serenity for me, and that was the constant bombardment of planes and helicopters from above. I mean, that kind of speaks for itself a little bit, but yeah, to be actually there, you think you're all alone for kilometres and kilometres, no one else around. And then, yeah, it's just a massive, massive drone that echoes through the whole gorge system. And it really reminds you that you're actually not too far away from civilization. So kind of put a bit of a dampener on it for me. But nevertheless, yeah, it was pretty easy to see why this area was a no drone zone in the whole national park. And I would have absolutely loved to get the drone up. But unfortunately, yeah, it's just a massive no-no in that area with the amount of air traffic that goes overhead. I did try mucking around and end up throwing the iPhone up on top of the tripod, extending the legs up and yeah, trying to emulate a slow drone shot from a couple of meters up above the ground. But yeah, I think it ended up turning to be out as a complete waste of time. But yeah, a bit of experimentation anyway. When I wrapped up the Piccaninny Creek Walk, I also did a bit of extra exploring around the other side of Purnululu National Park. Went and checked out a place called Chasm, and this was a massive, massive highlight for me as well. I was fortunate enough to be there when a guy was pumping out some tunes with a didgeridoo. This was super, super cool. I just sat there for about 10 or 15 minutes, closing my eyes and really just listening to him play the didgeridoo. Absolutely unreal with the echo off the walls, and yeah, I felt really, really special to be able to witness that. That pretty much wraps this one up though. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. By the time this video goes live, I will almost be hiking my longest trail yet, the Larapinta Trail in the Northern Territory. It's about 230 Ks and I've got 14 days scheduled for it. I will be sporadically posting some Instagram stories when I do get reception. So if you're interested in having a look, please feel free to drop in there, say good day. Yeah, it'd be awesome to have you there while I am hiking along the trail. Until then though, I will see you in the next video.